What's going on, guys? Hope everyone had a great weekend. I'm ready to get the Sunday scan going. I hope you guys are as well. It is going to be a jam-packed week. I am not going to lie to you guys. It's going to be very volatile, and I just wanted to preface that. I tried it, I've been trying to scan for some stocks since Friday. I think I found some really good names, but I want to try to keep it really tight. I don't really want to bounce around too much. Maybe once we get to Wednesday and FOMC occurs, then we could start looking at daily candles, kind of going into Thursday and Friday. But nonetheless, guys, it's going to be crazy. Just looking at the data, right? We have JOLTS, which is a huge one, obviously on Tuesday, and of course nothing on Monday, which is always nice. Monday I kind of view as that like kind of down day just to look at stuff, see how the tape's trading. I want to see where things are opening, how they're forming out. I always view that as like an accumulation before either a distribution or a markup, right? With how things have been trading at the highs, and we've been seeing some weakness in tech, I kind of have an idea. But nonetheless, right, I don't want to speculate too much. But Tuesday is when it really kicks off. We have JOLTS, right, and then Wednesday is the big one, the heavy hitter. We have the Fed interest rate decision, or FOMC, followed by Fed Chair Powell speaking 30 minutes after in his presser. And then we have a little bit of a back off, right? And it's still a big event, but we do have PMI on Thursday, and then another big hitter on Friday, right? So non-farm payrolls. So just kind of looking at this, I'll probably go live. I would say, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Friday. Then again, who knows? I might not even go live this week at all just because I don't want to make any emotional decisions on live. I feel like I've talked about it a lot, trying to get us into trades when I see stuff happening quickly. I kind of just want to pull back a little bit. I'm sure I'll still do some live trading this week. I always like being up there and kind of chatting with you guys, going through my ideas. But very, very, very volatile week. I would definitely recommend sizing down and just letting the market come to you and letting the dust settle. Because it's not just this, guys. It's not just these heavy hitters. We have to also deal with earnings, right? We are in the tech earnings week. We have the biggest names in tech reporting this week, and we have a lot of heavy hitters. So, big one that comes to mind before open is SoFi. That's just a, one to kind of look at to see how it opens. If it opens at good levels, we'll kind of keep an eye on that for a Monday trade, especially since it is pre-market. But Tuesday we do have Pfizer, we have GM, UPS, JetBlue. These are all cool, but I'm really looking at Tuesday after close. These are the big ones, right? We have Microsoft, AMD, and Google, right? These are going to be huge, not only for potential IV crush plays after. I am thinking of going short on AMD, right, into, I think, 0216, 145 puts. I'll talk about that here in a second. But yeah, big hitters on Tuesday after close. Perfect to go right into Wednesday, where we're going to open up going into FOMC. Before the open, we have Boeing. That's a good one to kind of keep an eye on. And then after that, right, we don't really have much. We have Qualcomm reporting. Nothing else I really liked here. I do want to keep an eye on home builders, right? So Meritage Homes is a good one, Pulte Group. They haven't been doing too hot. So I kind of want to keep an eye on how these end up performing because, yeah, they haven't been doing too hot. So besides that, I mean, we go into Thursday. I don't really care about the pre-market session here. Peloton's an interesting one, but honestly, I don't really care. I mean, who can care when you have Apple reporting after hours? So we have Apple, Amazon, Meta, another three big heavy hitters. This is basically the entire S&P, Nasdaq right here between these two. Obviously, Microsoft is a huge one, but yeah, Apple's huge. And then after that, Friday, we end up having some oil energy reporting as well. So this is a huge week, guys. Absolutely huge. I would argue that earnings is actually bigger than FOMC. I mean, it's kind of a toss-up, but this is going to be volatile, right? So I would really recommend just kind of letting the market do its thing, trying not to front run anything. It's okay to have ideas, but let these kind of play out. I would be sized down tremendously, going into this stuff. But yeah, I'm really interested in the AMD report. I want to see how that's going. And then obviously Apple, Amazon, Meta are two big ones, or three big ones as well. I'm not as concerned with Microsoft or Google for some reason. I don't know why. Charts don't really interest me as much on those. So yeah, AMD, Apple, Amazon, Meta are all of interest of this entire collection, really. And to recap, I do want to look at home builders, so I'm going to be looking at Meritage Homes, Pulte. What else? And that's really I mean, I guess I could look at like Pfizer, but or in BA is a good one after that sell-off, right? That we've been talking about with the door coming unhinged. But for the most part, I want to keep my eyes on what really controls and dictates the broader market, especially with that weakness we've been seeing in tech, right? So that's it for that. I just wanted to kind of go over what we have that's, stuff we can't really control. That's going to really dictate the market going into this week because it is a big one. Let's jump into some of the charts now that I want to be reviewing for this week. Okay, first and foremost is S, right? I've been looking at cybersecurity for a little bit. We've obviously had Snow, or not CRM, Crowd, and a couple other names do really well and traded straight to the highs, whereas S has been lagging a little bit. And I think this has potential, right? This is a really nice pullback, if you will, straight into this gap, right, where we have a gap down here, and I don't necessarily think it comes to that level. If you guys kind of know how this forms out in terms of structure, we have a really nice break of structure here where we had this bounce, lower high, right, kind of pulled down. We got our first higher low after this initial low, and it popped over and is kind of wedging back into this level here, right, and it's a clean break of structure. Obviously, if it breaks below, you would look for last point of support being that 25 level, right at the gap fill. But this looks really good for this level off of 25.56, and I would be targeting, right, just very simply the high here. This is still an internal high, but I would be targeting this with potential to kind of take out the high up here, right? So this would be kind of like my zone to be looking to take profits. This chart looks fantastic, not only from, the pullback into the spot after the gap up, the break of structure, and it's pretty well mitigated, right? You're not really seeing too much volume, hence, the volume here, if I can just get my arrow, right? Pretty low volume in terms of about divergence compared to price. And then you're starting to see an uptick on this last candle. So I really like calls either off of this 25.56. Of course, I'd be looking to swing. I don't really trade Sentinel-1 too often. I think I've traded it once in my career. So I would be looking to try to get some time on this. I always think time is friendly whenever you don't trade a name you're familiar with. So yeah, and obviously I would like to have a reserve add if this does fail. 25.56 to be able to add here without much stress, right? So I'm really liking the 216s, maybe the 315s. I'll have to take a look at that and see how those look in terms of premium pricing. But 216 is probably my go-to. I'd be looking for 27 calls. 27 to 28, somewhere in that range, because I want to target these highs here. But that's pretty much what I'm looking for. Nice volume divergence. This looks like a nice little flag. Simple pullback for BOS breaking base, right? If you also pull up your EMAs, you're tapping the 9 very nicely along with the 21. This looks like a nice EMA crossback, if I'm being honest. So really, really nice chart here, and it's lagging a really, really strong cybersecurity sector. This is going to be one of my top focuses. I'll probably put this at like number 2. Obviously, I'll show you guys my number 1 setup, and it's going to be more of a scalp, right? It's going to be something I'm trying to take directly correlated with interest rates. It's a name, once again, I really don't trade that often, but the setup's there. I want to take advantage of that. So let's jump in to the next chart. Number 2 is Mara. Okay, guys, so if you guys ended up seeing what I was looking at on Coin last week, right, we were kind of looking for a short just to get the last couple, ticks or so down to this spot here, 115 to like 116, right, these weekly lows. But we're not really seeing much of an effort to get it further down. Actually, we're seeing quite the opposite, where we're starting to see a tight consolidation and a nice base being built, right, where we're seeing a compression of the daily candles, meaning that there's not much effort to try to push those down, right? We're actually getting quite the opposite, where price is getting stuck and we're going to see an expansion. And really, it's going to be, in my opinion, the opposite way, especially coming off the weekly retest. I know we're not quite there yet on Coin, right? I would still be pretty bullish if we got a quick spike down. I would look for like something like that. But this looks really good, right? And we saw this kind of sell off into the weekly spot. We have these nice daily lows that are being held. We're getting a nice tight compression on the dailies as well. And then obviously take a look here. We have low volume leading into a high volume hammer where we got a nice hourly break of structure, right? And this is actually why part of the reason why I ended up swinging Coin over the weekend. There was also some nice bullish flow coming in for 134 Cs, which would be targeting up here, right? Reason that's a big spot that I was looking at is this weekly candle right here tied really nicely into the Bitcoin ETF that was announced, and this sold off pretty dramatically, right? So you can consider this kind of like a true fair value gap on the weekly, right? Somewhere right around there, 144 to 137. And I mean, honestly, it looks pretty good to kind of retrace back to that. Bitcoin is starting to recover, of course. It's always a good time too, whenever you're going into these interest rate decisions, that you'll typically see these names run, right, going into those. So I did swing that, although I didn't like the chart as much, right? It was kind of a speculative thing because I still wanted 115. So I'm not very heavy into that. But I do like Mara a little bit more in terms of the chart, right? So this pulled back into this level down here, right, where you can clearly see tight compression, bids being set here. We had a nice kind of retest almost of this gap down here. But you can see the defense here, right? They're building bids or consolidating, and then it marks up and launches straight through, right? We end up pulling back, lower high. We sell right back down into the spot. And I'm actually expecting this to kind of push back up here into this low here, right? If you guys remember the market structure shift, right? We almost did this same exact trade on SPY. I wasn't here for it, but if you guys watched it, right, that would be right here, where we can retest this spot, and I would probably look to go short on Mara again. But I still think there's a good opportunity to get something like this, where we can kind of pull back, right, if we hadn't already, and then kind of mark up to that, and then look to go short here if needed. But this is a really clean chart, guys. I like this a lot. If we take a look at volume by price, right, we have a nice volume shelf right here. We have thin air leading up to this spot here, right? If we take a look, literally bounced off the volume shelf. So this is a sick chart, guys. I'd probably be looking at the 19 calls for this week. I'd probably go a lot heavier than I did on Coin. Coin was just, like I said, a speculative idea based on flow. But take a look at that. I mean, really nice flag kind of forming out on the hourly. Would just like it to retest 1714 for an opportunity to go long into the 19 calls. Really sick chart. I think this is going to be probably my top focus. And then I will pair that right with my number 2 option, which is coming up right after this. Okay, last long side focus for me, guys, is going to be TLT, right? So the iShares 20-year Treasury bond. This is essentially if the Fed does cut rates, right? I think this will kind of fly. We're seeing this really nice, similar to Mara and some of these other speculative names, we're seeing a lot of tight compression at an objective, right, which would be considered like our gap. So 92.83 is a daily gap fill here, and it's really tightly compressed, right? We're seeing a lot of high volume at the lows here on these daily bars and the hourly bars without a low being made, and we're seeing a very, very tight spread on the daily candles, right? So it kind of shows you that the interest isn't really to move it lower despite the high volume. Kind of telltale signs of an accumulation. It would make a lot of sense going into an event like this with FOMC and, you know, obviously being directly correlated to interest rates. I would like to see more like hourly hammers, but we're not necessarily seeing that. We're just seeing a tight spread, high volume, which is still good enough in my opinion. But if you guys didn't see, right, we have a really clean target on this as well. I would say it's this gap up here. Right, I'm not trying to like just trade gaps from gap to gap, right? But these can be viewed as just like objectives, right? Imbalances in the chart that are easy to fill. So I'd be looking, top of this gap, right, is going to be right around here, 96. I think the start of it is 95, if I'm not wrong. Let's see where the start of it is. Yeah, 95.79. So I looked at it already. 0216, so February 16th, 95 calls are about 80 cents, and the 96 calls, which would be the the absolute peak of this, would be about 50 cents. So I don't want to front load this necessarily. I like the the calls if it can at least pull back and actually tag the objective down here at 92.83, or a breakout trade could be viable over this daily high here at 94.54. I'd probably just look at 95 calls. And it is kind of based on whether they decide to cut rates or not. I think this thing could potentially fly, very similar to the other names, right? Where we're getting like, it's not a low volume pullback necessarily, but this is just a tight compression. You guys can see it is pulling back. I wouldn't say on low volume, but pulling back pretty nicely here. I think this is a good opportunity to potentially go long on this. So if it they end up hiking again, or they just kind of stay the same, there's better names, but this is just something to kind of keep on watch. I like this chart a lot. So yeah, let's go ahead and just move on to the short side setups now. I only got 2, so let's take a look at those. For short setups, guys, Roblox has to be number 1 still. Weekly chart does not look the best. This looks like it's going to fail to get back towards this gap, or at least reclaim somewhere higher into these highs here. I don't know if this is necessarily the lower high on a weekly time frame, but it is giving me those vibes for sure. Right, the weekly is printing a pretty nasty wick here and a failure to get through these weekly lows. Remember, this was the key weekly spot, and you'll see it on the daily once I switch over. That was that massive SR flip. We're starting to see an uptick in volume here as well with a bullish 1 hour gap below. So we can see a clearer picture if we go to the daily here. Let's make this white too so you guys know what this is. So weekly resistance, right? I was a little bit hesitant on, I think it was Friday, right? Because you guys can see the weekly low here, right? Just consistent buyers stepping in, making this a support. It broke down, pushed back up on low vol. Now you guys can see the wicks, right? Complete opposite story here. It did get a couple closes above, and this is the reason I didn't take it on Friday. It looked pretty good to kind of hold over that level, and it pushed up one more time, and I just took my eyes off of it. Realistically, instead of the weekly low, you could have brought it like right around here, right? So where these consistent candle closes are at. Still gather some of the wicks here, but this would have been a better level in my opinion, like 41.72, right? So right around the close of this weekly bar here. What is that, January 2nd? I probably should have had that rather than the wick, but it's all good, right? I still think this is a viable setup. I would just like to see it hold under this daily support here at 40.54 now, right? And then give us something like this where it kind of breaks down, pushes up, retests again, and then I think it can trade down into this hourly bull gap. Ultimate goal, though, is to get a push into this internal low down here, right? So that would be 37.76. From there, obviously, I think we'll build out like another lower high on the daily / weekly. I assume it would be the hourly gap now as acting as a resistance. And then we look for a break under, a new low, and then I think we trade into this. The whole goal of this, right, is to get down here. We want to get the rest of this imbalance cleared out from 35.30, sorry, and then whatever this low is right here, right? Look something like that. So probably my top focus, it's still going to be the March 15th 35 puts. I want to try to get some time on this to actually fulfill the gap fill down here, or the imbalance fill. It's going to take a little bit of time, but this looks really, really good, guys, in my opinion. Still, right, I know I missed the optimal trade entry here. Just a small mishap on my part by taking the wick versus the close, or the daily close, or I'm sorry, the weekly close. But yeah, this still looks good. This is going to be probably my top short focus. That's going to be like full position size, right? I do have one that's coming up on SPY and AMD. I would say, SPY is kind of like, what's the right word? I'm more looking for that like end of week. We'll talk about that once I get to that. But AMD is going to be more of a lotto. So this is probably my only main short focus setup here. Chart still looks really good for a short. So let's jump into SPY really quickly. All right. SPY is weird because it's more of like, and I know I said that I think that interest rates will be cut, but I don't think that's necessarily bullish, guys. I think we're kind of seeing like a vacuum of liquidity. I actually, Chem has brought this up, and I've actually been DMing him a little bit too, that we're seeing this window of weakness till 2-2, but we're also seeing this charm really decaying contracts without movement. I think this FOMC, right, with that vacuum of liquidity that we've pretty much been seeing across Mag 7 and broader tech, I think that there's going to be like some kind of reinvigoration that occurs, right, through the use of this FOMC. And remember, we've been seeing nonstop bid downs on the market. I mean, I have all of them marked, as you guys can see, at least the big ones, right? We have 485.22, 482.42. Through that, we get the ultimate retest of the old all-time high at 480. And then from there, right, we have that 476.50, which I think is the biggest one, if I'm not wrong. But overall, the market's just kind of getting bid down over and over. What better time than, FOMC, right? A lot of people are going to be probably bullish on the fact that we're cutting rates. It doesn't always have to be that way. So I am just kind of looking for, I don't know the right word for it. It's a very selective short. I do think that if we start to slip under 485.22, right, I think we gravitate towards 482.42 pretty quickly. Reason for that was we haven't really built much support up here, guys. It's been the same exact thing over and over where we get this. This is the only meaningful candle, but even this was an imbalance candle. This was a news-driven candle. And we got a 2-bar consolidation, right, where we had an inside day, gap up, right? And we've just been getting really tight ranges here, where you can really feel the lack of liquidity. You can almost feel the heaviness here. But I'd really look for, if this daily low gets broken at 485.22, this print at 485.22, right? It might take a little bit for this to get absorbed, but if this slips, right, or we gap under and retest this, there's not much support. Like I said, there's only 2 bars here, right, with very, very low volume on the secondary bar. I can see us getting a push straight back to this, right, as the markets gets bid down by these big buyers, right? If it hits 1.7, I can see it slipping again, right? If this level fails at, I said 1.7, I'm sorry, 482.42, 1.7 billion. If that fails, I can see us slipping pretty quickly again down to 480. And then from 480, it's kind of fair game. I do think, once this hits 480, there's going to be a lot of buyers waiting to jump in there. I assume that's where we get a lower high and then kind of something like that. But I am kind of bearish on the back end of this week, not only from that perspective, right? The lack of buyers here, the kind of funnel or the vacuum that we're seeing of liquidity. But I do think that we see some misses in some of these names, guys. Kind of ties me into AMD, right? AMD kind of feels top heavy. I know a lot of people are probably taking longs up here. But I think we're going to see a lot of the AI froth come off. If you guys actually take a look at how some of the performance is happening across some of the names that are actually selling semiconductor chips, right? Like the big hitters, LRCX looks awful, guys. Look at the weekly here. Lam Research does not look good. This is a big hitter in the semiconductor industry. They're actually doing what AMD is doing. They're not actually taking on the froth of the AI speculation. TSM. This is the only one I think that actually looks pretty good. But TXN, look at that. TXN, Avgo, another shooting star off the high. ARM, like guys, it's all these names. Intel. So pretty much, I think that we're going to see the froth get shaken off on AMD, and we're going to see a pullback, based off the actual the business model of AMD, right? It's the bulk of everything. The AI stuff is not necessarily quite speculative yet because we are seeing application of it, but it's still in its new form. I would say newborn stages, right? Newfound stages. I still think the valuations are a little bit too high. I'm not going to get into the fundamental aspects, but you guys can see just a lot of these names are getting hit in the semiconductor sector. AMD leads the way, and I think we're going to see maybe even NVIDIA take a small hit here. But yeah, these names don't look the best, and I do think that kind of ties into SPY initially, right? We're going to see, and QQQ, of course, I think QQQ has the ability to do the same thing. Q's chart is actually a little bit better. It slips under 421.34, kind of the same thing, right? I think we come down to 412.99, so just 413. They're bidding this level once again. Pretty heavy. I think this is actually like 1.9. I've been saying I think tech is the first thing to slip, so Q's, right, will probably be a watch. But I like SPY. I don't know why. Something about SPY. I want to trade this. But yeah, if we slip under 485.22, I'll probably look for a short down to, I don't know, 480. It could be like this, right? We can get like a bounce there, retest this part, and then break down again, right? And then kind of get this little formation one more time where we have this, right? I don't know if it's going to be that picture perfect, but yeah, this is going to be kind of like just watching on the side, just seeing what happens. Once again, I'm bullish kind of Monday, Wednesday. I was looking at GEX. Trading Ticks posted this. I kind of was looking at the same thing, where we have Monday through Wednesday, kind of GEX kind of floating around between these two levels. And then ultimately, there's going to be a snap on Thursday, Friday, post FOMC, right? And obviously going into the earnings with Meta, Amazon, and Apple, where I think we can really open up some floodgates to make our way down to this 480, right? 480 is just the most logical level to be retested for big buyers to wait to buy at. It's the biggest GEX level as well, right? We also know we have constant bids kind of pulling this down. So I do think the short's coming, guys. I do think the short is coming. It's just about being patient for that. Just kind of, but like I said, right, I'm bullish on TLT, I'm bullish on Mara. I think that's going to be like the first part of this week, maybe an initial reaction on FOMC if there are rate cuts. But this is all on SPY. I just want to say this is speculative. Same thing with AMD. That's why AMD is kind of my, my lotto trade, if you will. I do think that this is going to maybe pull down a little bit more, come down to here, kind of get a little bit of a bounce, and then I'm actually thinking this comes, gets a gap down somewhere to 151 to 145. I'm probably going to take a lotto short on this for earnings, just kind of what I want to do. Probably put in like couple $100, maybe 300-500, and just see what ends up happening. But yeah, guys, that's going to be the scan. It's not too crazy. Pretty well controlled in the sense that I'm not looking too many different places. I have criteria for certain things. Overall, it's going to be pretty low size this week. But yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions, anything like that. As always, though, thanks for your guys' time, and I look forward to this week.